Hi, today we're going to be working on a Rococo Gilt Wood Carved frame, circa about early 1800s. It belonged to Elihu B. Washbourne. Elihu was an Illinois congressman before and during the Civil War and an ally to President Lincoln. And under President Grant, he was the Secretary of State and became the U.S. Minister to France later on. So it has a little bit of history behind it. But what happened, it fell off the wall onto a console. Thank God the console was underneath it. And it broke the bottom of it and damaged a lot of the top as well. A lot of damage on this frame. It's pretty delicate, but we're going to get it back together. Just looking around, showing you some of the places that it is damaged, and I'll show you some of my technique that I use to get this type of frame back together. I use a P210, which I've used on other frames, and I've never had a problem with it. I use it for wood turning, and it does pretty good for me, so I trust it. My air conditioner was on in my shop, and you couldn't hear anything that I was saying, so this is the first time I've done a voiceover. I hope it comes out okay, and I apologize for if it didn't. Anyway, here I'm just showing you the way I'm putting it back together. It's kind of showing you what I'm doing. I'm just gluing the pieces back in, fitting everything, making sure nothing breaks or chips off. This whole video is about 11 minutes long. I know it's kind of long, but I just wanted to show you the different process of going through something like this. All right, I'm just finishing up putting the pieces that were actually broke off back together and getting any small pieces that may have fell off as well. The customer gave this to me in a small bag, the small pieces, so I want to make sure that I use every piece that I can to keep the frame original. Here I'm just pointing out some of the damage that I'll need to fix. Here's a piece that I am gluing back together now, one of the large pieces that right towards the end of the last bit of the pieces that need to be glued back on, and a small piece that need to be glued back on as well. Using the P210 product. Again, just pointing out the damage I'm going to be fixing after the glue up. Now this is the glue up just on the front. It's gone through to the back, but I'll do some more glue up on the back as well when I flip it over. Now I've mixed up an epoxy putty, a product by JB Weld that I use a lot to repair wood products, and pretty much it works for a lot of different things, but it's a good product. Again, another product I trust, I've had a lot of experience with. JB Weld, Wood Weld. I use a brush and a little bit of water. Once I put the putty in, it's consistency of like Play-Doh, and the water just helps make it soft enough so I can mush it into different places and brush it in, and it flows nice. It shapes to what I want it to while it's wet. When it dries, it's rock hard. You can sand it and shape it. Great product. So here I'm just filling the cracks from the damage after gluing. Mash the putty in, then I use my wet fingers with the spray bottle. And I have a rag. I'm very careful not to get the frame or any of the wood, saturated. It does take a little bit of water. I try to wipe it off right away. Any broken pieces that I need to or don't have, I'll use the epoxy putty to remake that piece. After it's been sanded a little bit and painted, you'll never know it was there. I tried to hide the cracks the best I could. They're not perfect, by no means. And I am by no means an expert antique restorer. It's just a hobby for me, and I enjoy doing it. I'm still learning a lot along the way. All this has been repaired. So waiting to let it dry. Pieces have been remade that weren't there before. Just showing you those spots. It's still soft. It'll have to dry overnight. I shape them the best I can while it's wet, but once it dries, I can shape it a little bit better. I mean, you know, the detail. Okay, now I've flipped this over, and I'm pointing out where I've used the P210 to fix some of the cracks, and some of the cracks I'm going to fix. Here I'm fixing the extended crack that went all the way through, and then after the P210 I use the epoxy putty over it, which hides a lot of the P210 and makes it look like regular wood once it dries. Little piece of the frame was broke. Just want to get that back together. Keep my fingers wet or damp to help mold it. Here the product is dry. I'll have some sanding and some cleaning to do with the chisel. You can see some of the places where I puttied. Some of it you can't. Because of the texture on the back of this frame, it hides a lot. Now that it's dried, I'm taking a 300 sandpaper and just lightly sanding over it, trying to keep and maintain the shape of what I'm sanding over, trying not to get onto the frame. I'm trying to keep as much of the frame intact, the original frame intact as possible. I know it looks like I'm just going crazy on that, but I really am focusing on what spots to hit. Now, my wife has color matched the gold. Now we're going over it without taking away the look. Maintain the look of the frame, the antique of it. Or you know what I mean. The frame originally fell off. I think it fell off because the screws were only going through the wood in the back. They were about 1/4 inch long, and they had came out of one side. I'm replacing those screws with screws that go well into the frame so that it doesn't fall off again. And here's the finished product. Every place in these pictures across the center is a spot that was damaged and cracked. Not perfect, but I think it looks good. I'll point out some of the damage here. This was the bottom that was broken off. Looks good. And that's it. Beautiful frame in a messy shop.